Now do your 3, 2, 1. All right, well, thank you to Matrix Networks for hosting this incredible event, Tech Mixer 9. I'm GR Hereford, and we're here today to talk about UC and specifically Microsoft Teams. I'm joined by Megan Ty, Director of UC and CCaaS, and Scott Glick, Senior Engineer, both from Telarus, one of the largest distributors of as-a-service technology in North America. Welcome to both you guys. Happy to have you here.
Thanks, GR.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Hey, Megan, you wake up every day and have a specific focus on UCaaS and CCaaS. So when I say Microsoft Teams, what's the first thing that comes to mind for you?
Oh gosh, first thing is, wow, I feel like 90 or 95% of all the customers we talk to every day have Microsoft Teams, and now they want to integrate into it somehow. So that's like the topic of conversation every day.
And how's that changed since COVID started? Have they had it forever?
No, so I do ask that question when I'm talking to customers to figure out what their needs are. And I'll say, well, you're using Teams today. How are you using it? And when did you start using it? So some of them will say, oh, we've always been using it for years. Others, the majority will say, well, we didn't really start using this until we had a work from home. And GR was funny because you'll probably hear these numbers. Microsoft, so before the pandemic hit, they probably had about 44,000 million users. And then right as pandemic hit, I think they escalated to about, I don't know, 145 or something. Now they're at 250 million users today, 250 million active users on Teams.
Dang. Now Teams to me, and I'm not the expert you guys are, but Teams to me seems kind of like a catch-all, right? It started as collaboration, right? And now they've got voice, and a lot of people seem to be adding the voice. Is that what you're seeing?
Mm-hmm.
Or wanting to add the voice?
Right. Yeah, because I think what we've seen was because they had to quickly go and work from home, they had to figure out a way to collaborate internally. Mm-hmm. And Microsoft Teams is a great collaboration tool. So they were able to communicate internally. And now we're starting to see, as the dust is starting to settle, and they realize, we are really going to continue to work from home for a while. How do we now make calls to the outside world? And so this is where Scott and I, they come to us and ask us questions. So how do we do this? What are the ways that we can get voice onto Teams?
So that's kind of a good segue. So what are some things to be aware of for people when they're moving to Teams? I'll throw that out to you, Glick, and to you, Megan.
Yeah.
What are some things that people need to be aware of for the voice side of Teams?
Yeah, so the thing I commonly run into is, people, they already have Teams, they're already using it to do collaboration between internal users and maybe some web calling or some web collaboration stuff, but they really don't realize what it takes to voice enable Teams, right? So unless you have that E5 license already, which most people don't because it's pretty expensive, they need to buy the voice enablement license. And in your average standard or business package, or even your E1 or E3 package, that voice enablement license roughly retail is about $8 a seat. So you take that and that turns on the ability to use that as a phone system, then you still need a calling plan. And if you look at Microsoft's calling plans, those are roughly another $12 for a domestic plan plus whatever international calling you might do. So now you're at, $20 a user to enable voice. So that cost effectiveness sometimes goes away, but now I don't have to manage a separate tool, right? I have it all here. It's one piece of equipment or one piece of service to manage. So that's kind of the conversation I have. Mm-hmm. Does that fit your needs? Can you manage Exchange Online? Because now that's your PBX. Do you have simple call trees? Do you have simple call routing, right? So if the answers to that are yes, direct routing is great, right? But then sometimes you have to look at something a little bit more elaborate, and this is what Megan and I run into all the time, is that kind of the different levels of a Teams deployment, one being just true direct routing. Teams is your phone system, all your users are in Teams, all your phone numbers are in Teams, and all your programming is done in Teams. But then you'll have what I call a split brain or a hybrid model, where you need some more complex auto attendant, multi-level, you need some more complex call flows, maybe a small contact center or something like that. That's where I go, and I have an overarching UCaaS platform that I can have users living in Teams, and I can have users living in a true UCaaS environment. So I can pair the need with the user, and then not necessarily be stuck with just one single type of user. Megan, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, I think that's great. You're right. I think going back to what you were saying was, we're trying to help the customers figure out what are their requirements, what are their needs, because there are some limitations. If they come to us and say, hey, we're thinking about going with Microsoft for the voice portion, we have to say, okay, hold on, what are some of the requirements you need? Or if you're in manufacturing, do you need overhead paging? Or maybe an automotive car dealership, oftentimes they need overhead paging. Microsoft doesn't support that. So, okay, that's sort of a red flag for Scott and I to say, well, hold on, Microsoft's probably not the way to go for the voice portion. Let's talk to you about, a third-party UCaaS provider who can do all that, who can support those features. Call recording, call reporting, some of these things, call queuing, right? These are some things that we know that Microsoft can't support. So we have to listen for that. So to your point, Scott, I think it's really important to talk about what those requirements are, what features are they looking for, and then we can help steer them in the right direction.
Yeah, and one more thing that is another look at this is, if you're going to start doing this, what I call split brain or hybrid type model, is do you have to really enable voice on the Microsoft side? Because a lot of these UCaaS providers have a plugin. Now, there's some pros and cons to that. Pros are, I don't have to buy that $8 license. Con is your call logs live in your UCaaS solution and not in your Teams client. But the benefit is I can have one user interface that I live in for the most part, right?
Yeah.
But if I need to make a phone call or take a phone call, that shortcut, basically what it is, that plugin within the Teams client now bounces me out to my UCaaS solution. So I get that single pane of glass type mentality, but I get the feature set of a full UCaaS solution without kind of double vesting kind of scenario.
So, Gio, what Scott is talking about are like the different ways to integrate into Teams.
Okay.
So, and we can break it down. Okay. So I'm going to kind of follow up with what he was saying there are different ways to integrate into Teams. So when we hear customers say, we want to integrate into Teams, the first thing we ask is, hold on, what do you mean? Your employees, your staff members, what is their behavior? And oftentimes we'll hear, gosh, we just love Teams so much. We use it internally all the time. We've got people who don't want to steer away from that. We don't want a separate application. It's too much to manage. Okay, so that to Scott and I were like, oh, so you want native integrations with direct routing was what Scott was referring to.
Direct routing is native integration.
Yeah, native integration, meaning as a user, I'm living out of that Teams interface and that's all I know. I'm going to click on the phone icon. It's going to make phone calls. I don't even know that there's a third-party UCaaS provider on the back end that I'm using for voice. I think I'm just using Microsoft's interface. But really on the back end, you've got this UCaaS provider who's doing all of the direct routing for you. So you're on their voice network. So that's one way, that's native integration. The other way that Scott was talking about was, plugins or whatnot, there's a little phone icon embedded in the user interface. And when you click on that, it actually launches a separate soft phone. That's like the UCaaS provider soft phone. And so I think the advantage to that is you get all the additional features that this UCaaS provider can offer you. And plus you have like a failover or backup. So if Microsoft Teams is down, and it's been down several times already this year, if it's down and you did this cross launch to this soft phone, you've got it's its own separate entity. So it's running. So it's running on its own, right? So there's some advantages there. When you do the native integration, where you're just living totally out of the Microsoft, so there's not a separate application being launched, you don't get to take advantage of all the additional features that a UCaaS provider can bring into when you use that soft phone. So
see, this is what I love about talking with you guys is you're agnostic, right? So you're not repping any one particular UCaaS provider. You're not repping Microsoft, but you live in this world that I don't live in, right? I touch it, but not like you guys do. You wake up every day thinking about this stuff, talking about this stuff. You're talking to end user clients all the time. You're talking to industry experts all the time. This is very helpful.
Yeah, we're completely unbiased. I mean, we're trying to figure out, Scott and I are like, what issues are we trying to solve for with this customer? Right. And this is where Matrix comes in as well. We're all kind of working together to figure out what are the issues? What are the business objectives that we're trying to solve for? And what is the best solution that we need to bring to the table? Scott, sorry, you were going to.
Yeah, no, I was just going to kind of close out with it. It really, to me, is three things. Your licensing, what does that look like? And what is it going to take to get you to where you need to be? Two is resiliency and redundancy. How robust and how much do you want to be, I don't want to use the term stuck, but, all your eggs in one basket, so to speak, with teams. And then two, your overall functionality that you need to run your business. So you may have a section of sales folks that need Salesforce integration or some other type of thing. And then you have your basic users that don't need anything but a telephone to ring on the desk or a phone to call out on, right? So being able to break those down, identify those, and apply the right design for that specific customer is where this conversation really goes every day for us.
Well, and I think that's a good point, because like you said, I wasn't aware that Microsoft wouldn't support overhead paging, right? If it's a car dealership, that's kind of a non-starter, right? Like they've got to, I think they would have to have that. And so having a conversation with Matrix, having a conversation with you guys, making sure you're working with somebody who is coming at it from a customer need standpoint first, not, gee, let me try to fit this square peg in a round hole, trying to find the right solution that they have in their particular provider offering, I think is important.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different options out there, and there's a lot of different ways to do it. So you definitely have to kind of wipe the slate clean and start from scratch and talk about it.
So let's talk trends. Because you guys do all these around the country, industry trends, are there certain verticals that you're seeing adopt? Let's talk UCaaS or Teams, right? Are you seeing everybody adopt UCaaS? Are you seeing everybody ask about Teams? You said, Megan, I think 90% of the people you're talking to are at least asking about Teams, right? Are there certain, is it financial or retail or what is it?
Yeah, the complete gamut. So I see a lot in the financial services or FinServe. I see a lot in the retail space, insurance companies, those with multiple locations. Because again, they're trying to figure a way to streamline their internal and external engagement processes and tools, right? How do we talk to each other? How do we talk to the outside world and vice versa? Trying to streamline that. I see in healthcare, we see that they're starting to slowly convert to cloud services. So, UCaaS and maybe even contact center, we're seeing some of that. Manufacturing is starting to come up quite a bit, which is good because those guys are traditionally on, old school on-premise PBXs and now
legacy, say it.
Transfer legacy old stuff, right? I can't even say it. But so it's exciting to see the manufacturing companies and industries starting to move into the cloud, but it's funny because they might be on the old school telephony systems, but they're all using Teams as a way to collaborate internally.
Yeah, I think it's a logical mindset that, hey, I have this tool, Teams. Why I just sent my workforce home. Why not take advantage of this? Why am I trying to take these other legacy things like my PBX that's on-prem and make it work at their house and all these other little nuances that come into play when I sent people home? Why can't I just enable this tool to the next level and utilize that? So that's what we, then that we have that conversation of what it's going to take to get there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they all have their own challenges, GR, depending on the vertical markets. But the trend that we're seeing now is, of course, how do we move off of this on-prem PBX, which is hard to maintain? And how do we make it more robust for all of our remote and flexible, right, for all of our remote employees? Because we don't know what the future is going to look like. So that's one thing. But the trend we're seeing is a lot of businesses out there now are leaning towards self-services. How do we automate? The key word is automation. Think about the three of us, right? We're customers of some sort of brand or logo. How do we communicate with our brands? We want things in real time at our fingertips. We want answers quick. So for me, I'd rather have access to information where I can solve my own questions, answer my own questions, as opposed to, hold on, let me sit on hold, let me call in, let me sit on hold for the next person to pick up my call. And I got to ask them, and all that stuff, right? So I don't have patience for that sometimes. But so a lot of the businesses were, regardless of which vertical, a lot of them now are saying, well, how do we automate a lot of this now, right? And make it easier for our customers to reach out to us. And that could be texting. We get a lot of that asked. appointment setting, whatever the case may be, sending out a link, just texting, just to communicate back and forth. Because think about the demographics, right? A lot of the younger generations, or even, I mean, the three of us, I mean, we're not spring chickens, or I'm speaking for myself.
Hey, speak for yourself, yeah.
I know, right? But
To your point, my kids barely even know what phone numbers are, right?
Right?
It's who's in their phone is their picture or their name, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, when I look at the usage for my kids, my 18-year-old, he typically has like no joke, less than 10 minutes of usage on his Verizon phone. It's all texting,
All
right?
texting.
So
Well,
how's that
yeah,
going to change the needs going forward, right?
I'm still trying to figure out how to use all those forever stamps I got in the drawer.
Yep. Hey, I know we're running a little bit long, but I want to ask you guys about security really quick because it's just part of the conversation, I think, for everything now. And is there, when you were talking about the native versus the other one for teams, is there security differences there too, or is it pretty much the same, or how does that work?
I would say in general terms, most of them are already doing secure encrypted tunneling to from the voice carrier to the team's environment, right? So you don't need to worry about that. That's all done already for you. And that's kind of the beauty of using what I would call a third party voice carrier, is you don't have to worry about the session border controller, the commonly referred to as SBC. All that stuff's taken care of by the carrier. So the security, all the compliances, all that's done on the back end, the encryption. It's just, typical, requirements at your customer site or at your end user location. Standard protocol applies there for security. But as far as these third-party carriers that are doing the voice, they're all set and ready to go.
Okay. Yeah. So GR, I would say, I would recommend for the customers who are interested in having further conversations, let us have those conversations about security. What are some of the compliances they have to adhere to? And we'll make sure that we find the right solution that's going to help them with regulations and whatnot.
Thank you. Yeah, I love it. And that's kind of how we'll wrap this up too. If you're watching this video and you'd like to learn more, please reach out to your Matrix Networks account executive and they can arrange a conversation with Megan or Scott and go deeper. So thanks, guys. I really appreciate this conversation. It was very educational for me.
Yeah, it was fun, GR. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
How do I